It's my house, come on, turn it up. Hear a knock on the door and the night begins. Cause we've done this before, so you come on in. Make yourself at my home, tell me where you been. Pour yourself something cold, baby, cheers to this. Sometimes you gotta stay in, and you know where I live. Yeah, you know what we is. Sometimes you gotta stay in. Welcome to my house, baby, take control now. We can't even slow down. We don't have to go a while. Welcome to my house, play that music too loud. Show me what you do now. We don't have to go a while. Welcome to my house. Welcome to my house. Morning comes and you know that you wanna stay. Close the blinds, let's pretend that the time has changed. Keep our clothes on the floor, open up champagne. Let's continue tonight, come on, celebrate. That's how we do. Sometimes you gotta stay in, and you know where I live. Yeah, you know what we is. Sometimes you gotta stay in. Welcome to my house, baby, take control now. We can't even slow down. We don't have to go a while. Welcome to my house, play that music too loud. Show me what you do now. We don't have to go a while. Welcome to my house. Welcome to my house. Welcome to my duck off the crib, the spot, the pan. But my house is your house if you throwing it back. Excuse me if my home draining the sand. Soon as these happy faces land, you can run with the cash. Home run, slam dunk, touchdown pass. Mi casa es tu casa, so it ain't no holding back. Another shot of vodka, you know what's in my glass. It's my house, just relax. Welcome to my house, baby, take control now. We can't even slow down. We don't have to go. Cheers to this. Welcome to my house. Play that music too loud. Show me what you do now. We don't have to go a while. Welcome to my house.
Hello, everyone, and enjoy whatever moment of the day it is on your time zone. We are so happy that yet again you took the time and the curiosity to be with us for another conversation in our April series. I just took a second just to check that I was unmuted because, believe it or not, yesterday I gave the best introduction ever in my life while being muted. So, yeah, I guess life happens. But today we are absolutely good to go. We will be spending the next hour, which will seem like a very, very short hour, talking about one of the timeliest topics today: delivering for the people and the business, the power of a positive work environment, and how to create it. I will ask Jessa, who is helping us backstage, to bring our amazing speakers on screen. And while they pop up, I will just take the opportunity to welcome people as they jump on the link and encourage everyone. Please do drop us a short note. Just let us know where you're listening in from. It's always so good to see where Hacking HR takes us around the world. And also, I do encourage you to consider this as much your conversation space as it is open to our panelists. So do participate in the chat, answer the questions. I am sure that at least some of our speakers will also keep an eye or a lens on the comments, and we are always happy to bring questions and comments into our conversation. Now, that being said, my name is Minola Jacques. For the next hour, you can call me Hacking HR. I will happily answer to that. I welcome you on my screen from Basel in Switzerland. It's a sunny afternoon, just the perfect weather for deep conversations. And I was looking forward to this. First, because of the topic. Second, because of the amazing speakers that we have with us today. But thirdly, last but not least, because I have the absolute joy and honor and humbling experience to have two of my fellow Hacking HR facilitators with me today. So, Sony and Mina, I am so happy that I have you on this panel and that I get to give you credit for your amazing work. I watch your conversations and it's always such a joy and inspiration. Now, you all know the drill. What I will do, I will pass the e-mic around clockwise as you are on my screen. That means, Mina, you will go first. And here is the first ask of the day. Just a short introduction. And then what we've heard over and over again is that to say that the past 3 years have been challenging might be the understatement of the decade. Now, what is one thing that is deeply meaningful and or surprising that you have learned about your own selves over these past 3 years that have shaped your expectations from the workplace? And again, I will encourage the audience to consider this an open question. Just drop us your thoughts and your reflections in the chat. Mina, welcome. Please kick us off.
Hello, and thank you for your kind words. And it's likewise, it's always a joy to watch you. And I think this is the first time we're on the same panel, I guess. Now
Live, yes.
Yes. So it's amazing to be on your panel today. And as a short introduction, I'm based in Istanbul, Turkey, and it's almost evening here. Joining from Istanbul. It was a sunny weather too, as well. We are now the spring is around, so I cannot complain about that. I'm the founder of Happy Work Studio, and at Happy Work Studio, we help companies transition to remote hybrid work and revamp their processes around the new way of working. And we are also organizing programs, happiness programs for individuals and corporates, and trying to create workplaces, not specifically physical places, but like work as a culture, and to build those positive cultures. And for me, the last decade, let me say, because I've been in the space of remote work since 2012, but this was not as common. And what I was trying to do was like convince people that this is something that everyone can enjoy. But over the last 3 years, let's say after the pandemic, this has become a common thing for everyone. And for me, it was really a joy. And at the same time, some enthusiasm to see how people were embracing that. And the meaning, the purpose has been in the center of my life, my work life, over the last 3 years. So if you ask me what has changed, I am now going after my purpose, going after my meaning. And that is like true for everything, even choosing the clients that I work with. If they are not in sync with my purpose, my values, then I even do not choose the client to work with. So yeah, I mean, as an introduction, that has been my compass over the last couple of years.
Thank you so much, Mina. Nicole, welcome.
Hi, so I'm Nicole. I'm joining from Austria, Graz especially. I'm responsible for HR and finance, like the head of HR and finance at AppRadar. AppRadar is a SaaS business, so if you have an app and want to have app marketing, I would say come to AppRadar. So why did I join the panel? When I started at AppRadar, I think we were like 20. Then we we grew like to almost 60 people in total. And then positive work culture and everything which is associated with actually being positive was really getting important, because becoming from a startup, getting to a scale up, kind of messy from structure, and also getting on board a lot of new people. So really happy to talk about my experience in that area. And as we were talking about the last 3 years, what especially happened for me was like finding my balance. I did realize while actually being in home office during Corona times, I loved it at first. later it sucked because I was missing the social part a lot. So the 3 years for me were a lot and intense in all of my areas, may it be privately or business-wise, in finding the perfect balance. So that's shortly everything about me.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And I'm sure that one thing that we all have in common is navigating various curves over these past 3 years, whether professionally, personally, or can we really separate these two so clearly? Dan, welcome. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me. As I said, my name is Dan George. I run a small consulting firm focused on workforce planning and people analytics. It's called Piper Key. Been running this for about the last 5 or so years, but historically I've been in consulting almost my entire career, except for a short bit where I was kind of head of people analytics and workforce strategy at Bridgestone here. I'm located in Nashville, Tennessee. So happy to see a lot of people from the US, but also from around the world, which is incredible. So excited to talk about this topic, as well as I think, kind of the positive environment, for both yourself and for the business is a huge win. So excited to be here.
Thank you. And anything from the past 3 years, any insights about your relationship with the workplace that you want to share?
Absolutely. I've worked with a bunch of different companies within HR and its business, and I can tell you that the most profitable, the most sustainable, the most successful businesses have all come from having positive work environments where the people are delivering, they're using, or they're employing kind of their best self and attitude, toward that work. And you can just see, just in terms of even what's called discretionary effort, the better positive work environments just seem to deliver better value for everyone.
Thank you. Angela, welcome. Good to see you again. It's been what, a week, 2 weeks?
I think that's probably about right. Thanks, Manila. Good to see you again. Hi, everybody. I'm Angela Hayroth. I'm a talent management and talent lifecycle design expert. I founded a consulting company, Talent Lifecycle Designs, after about 20 years experience leading various aspects of talent management for large corporations. And now what I get to do is guide organizations externally in the creation and enhancement of their employee experiences to do what we're talking about here, to create these positive work environments. I'm based out of Denver in Colorado. We are squarely in the middle of spring with the gorgeous weather. Finally, a week ago, we had our last, hopefully, snow. So we're in nice weather now. In terms of the last 3 years, I hear people a lot of times talking about how they've been lonely, excessively lonely over these last 3 years. And I think it's been the opposite for me. I've been actually more connected than ever over these last 3 years. Things like this, connecting to friends and having deep conversations over the phone or over Zoom if we're not in the same location, if we are going on walks much more often than we used to, and really, really digging in deep with people and getting to know them in a way that I don't think we ever did before. I think sometimes the workplace conversations, and when I say friends, many of these were past colleagues, and sometimes that work environment can lead to a less than genuine interaction when you're all in your office environments and thinking about how you're going to be judged for your performance and things like that. And I have found over these last 3 years that we have been more genuine, more open with each other. My connections have gone much deeper. It takes a lot of intentionality and vulnerability, but I again have found more connection, not less, over these last 3 years in this virtual environment. And I will be forever grateful for that.
Thank you. And Sony, finally we get to share a panel. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. There's always the pro and con of being in this spot, right? I get a lot of time to think about something, but then usually everyone else makes all these fantastic insights. And so I'm like, well, what are the scraps left over with? But hey, everyone, I'm Sony. For those of you I've not been fortunate enough to meet yet, I am in the Central Florida area, and I have been spending the last year plus developing a HR consultancy called Red Sea, where we have a proprietary culture diagnostic. We quantify your culture, and then we take a culture-based approach to designing the business, whether it's determining how to do your OKRs or your onboarding or your recruitment or your performance management, whatever that might be. But more recently, last 6 weeks, I joined a company called RefMasters as CEO and co-founder. And RefMasters is a social and educational platform for referees, coaches, fans, and players to elevate their knowledge and understanding of their favorite sport. So a little bit of a pivot for me, but very excited to be in that position and really excited to talk about this. Last 3 years, what I'll say is this: I'm definitely one of those people that enjoy working co-located with other individuals in a physical space. But what I found to be helpful to keep my sanity through all of this is I have an adage: to belong is to be short. And with belonging being so important and something that has been dissected over the last couple of years, I think more so than previously, I find that trying to shrink my world, it increases my ability to feel that sense of belonging. So I think of shrinking where to look, shrinking where to show up, and shrinking my why to care. I find that without doing that, things get quite overwhelming, and I feel a bit more detached than I'd like to. So my takeaway is to belong is to be short.
Mm. Thank you all so very much. I'm looking at the comments and I see people literally from all over the world joining in. So a big thank you to people being here and spending some time with us, especially for those who are doing this either very early or very late on their time zones. Now let's ease into the topic. And one of the reasons why I was so happy to see this very diverse panel is because in every single conversation about a work environment, and especially a positive work environment, there are so many cultural declinations, so many even generational declinations. So I would invite you to just take a few minutes and really have a conversation around what does a positive work environment look like, sound like, feel like. And if we can look at it through different lenses, that would be wonderful. Now, what I will do, I will just go diagonally and invite Dan to lead us into the series of answers. I will do a +1 on what Sony said. It is a hot seat to go last in this conversation, so consider the unmuting competition officially open and just build your conversation. Then please take us away.
I think as I kind of look across this topic and everyone that's here, I come across just a couple of thoughts as to what it means to be positive, what it means to kind of take in the different cultural aspects of people across the world, of companies and organizations across the world. I even kind of resurrect some of my own experience. I'm married to a Brazilian, and one of the funny things about being married to a Latin American is that they have a different view of kind of what can be a positive environment. Oftentimes, working within Latin America and South America, you get a healthy tension, and that actually creates more positivity than kind of what we would consider normal here in the U.S. And so I tend to start, kind of these conversations is with, as a culture within the organization, what typically does breed positivity? And it doesn't always have to mean, everyone's happy and smiling and walking around and congratulating everybody. Sure, there's great aspects of, having gratitude and trying to do the best by people, but there's also this aspect of, healthy tension. And there's been a couple, studies out recently, one by Michael Arena, who does a lot of network analysis, and how he talks about, the most successful companies come from, having a healthy amount of tension. But tension doesn't need to be negative. Some of that tension can be positive because the end result, and again, which a lot of us derive or worth our value from, is being successful at our work and enjoying it, right? And so it doesn't always necessarily have to mean that we're all, high-fiving, congratulating ourselves, but it can be that, we have arguments, but that things tend to end out in which we learn to compromise, we learn to work together, and we learn to kind of share our experiences and beliefs so that we can get to the best possible outcomes for the business and for ourselves. So I figured I'd just kind of start it off with that perspective, as that's maybe one that not all of us think about all too often.
Thank you, Dan.
That's
I'd
me,
like
right?
to add.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead. You
No,
were
no,
the
please,
last
go ahead.
one.
Negotiation. So let's do it alphabetically. Mina, you go first, and then Sonny, we go with you.
Yeah, so I would like to add something on top of what Dan was mentioning about the tension, the right level of tension. Because like growth, we all know that growth happens when we are out of our comfort zone. And so a little bit of that tension and a little bit of that anxiety is putting us in the growth zone and putting the employees in the growth zone. I think what's most important is if they can take that risk. So if it's okay to provide them that, safe space to take the risk so that they can grow. And I think that's why the fundamental thing is providing the psychological safety. And I keep saying this in every project that I am pursuing. If you have psychological safety prevailing in the company, then everyone has that, that comfort. And so to try new things, to just be okay with expressing their ideas no matter what. So if they know that they can self-express themselves, be at their best selves, and don't fear because that there's something's going to happen to them because of the thoughts or any ideas that they express, I think that's where the growth and that's where the positivity comes from.
I'll just echo what my esteemed panelists have already offered. There's a book came out a few years ago called Sapiens from Yuval Noah Harari, I think, and he makes a really compelling definition of culture that I've adopted over the last few years. He talks about culture as the result of how a group of people work through their conflicts. And he makes a couple of interesting examples. So one is in Europe in the medieval ages. He talks about the conflict between chivalry and Christianity as thoughts, as ideas. More recently in the West, we've got this tension between equality and freedom. I would say in the modern workplace, especially the last few years, the conflict that we're seeing is between wellness and performance. And it doesn't mean that these are mutually exclusive. You can do both, but I think organizations are struggling with how they talk about both of those in relation to each other. Really great example recently is Salesforce, which has been really famous for its culture for years, with some pressure recently from investors to focus on profits and on margins, trying to get this balancing act between wellness and performance. Certainly we see companies that are able to do it, but that's a conflict that certainly is difficult to manage.
And I want to just add into all of the conversation. Something you said, Manola, in the beginning of the question was about what does it feel like as well. I think we've landed on some really good definitions of what it is. I think about what things like psychological safety and belonging and some of these things we've talked about feel like. And I think about some of the negative environments I've been in. I'm constantly watching my back. I'm constantly having to think about, what is somebody going to criticize me for? What am I going to have to defend my team for? What am I going to have to have a term? I don't know if it's an international term or just an American term, a CYA kind of thing, where I have to make sure that I have all of my defense mechanisms ready to go in case I have to build a case of why I made a choice I made. That's not a positive work environment, to be constantly under that kind of pressure, because I'm not performing, I'm not safe, I'm not any of these things we've talked about, because I'm always thinking about who's behind me, who's ready to attack me and my team, instead of a positive work environment where my intention is assumed positive. like Dan said, it may not be that I'm walking around laughing and smiling all the time, but people assume that each other has a positive intent for one another, and we're looking for that positive intent instead of that defensiveness. And you can really feel that the tension in one versus the other.
To add to that, for me, a positive work culture, work environment is also the situation where people are actually able to own up to what they did, either telling me, hey, look, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, or I'm owning up to 50% of what happening is on my table. And if in the silence that follows afterwards, and then the answers you receive, if they're like, hey, we're going to figure this out together, look, the other 50% there are on my table, in the future we do it differently, this is for me a positive work environment where you're also able to actually say, look, I did mess up. And even if you do not have the answer, as long as you're not getting judged, if people actually are there, support you and try to understand your point, this is also a sign of a positive work culture. Additionally, for me, positive work culture also is like 90s music. In the room, for example, like here, when, for example, my coworkers and I, we dance off our stress, it's people smiling, it's people coming to HR with their worries. When they do feel the trust that they can talk to you, that you keep quiet, or calm, then you try to actually help each other. These are all signs of a really positive culture.
I really love how quickly and how clearly it popped up in this conversation that it's not just about people smiling around and nurturing quite a lot of screensavers, if I may call them like that. Now, listening to your conversation, there were a few key points that I would just like to highlight and then connect them with something else that comes out of many other conversations. Apologies. So we mentioned psychological safety, we mentioned empathy, we mentioned trust, more or less clearly so. And in a lot of conversations, I would say most of the conversations, these come as something that managers can ensure, and it's their responsibility to create. Either that, or, oh, this is yet another fluffy HR thingy. Now, all of you mentioned everybody's or each other. So my next question is, what are some of the small yet most intentional and meaningful things that anyone can do to contribute to a positive work environment? Sony, please.
I'll go for it. This is not the answer of rocket science. It's really simple, and I'm sure the rest of you will have more insightful things. But one place is to start. I find it checking in on how someone's doing and not following up with any conversation about work. It's just a really simple, small thing. I often find myself saying like, oh, how are things going? And then being, oh, here's something about a meeting or about a thing that has to happen. But just as a really, really basic starting point, I find that there's just a lot of humanity in that. And, taking a few minutes to do that. And when in HR, we talk about employee engagement or driving morale or satisfaction, et cetera. We can get really caught up here with like these really great big projects and things. And it comes back to that trying to shrink our world. Like, what are the 3 things we can do today to like put a smile on someone's face or just make someone feel like you care? And if you can do 3 in one day, that's pretty cool.
I like the challenge that you just launched. Make 3 people smile on any given day. That's wonderful. Mina, I saw you unmuting yourself.
We usually, I love how Sonia was mentioning, because people usually think that they need to do extraordinary things, some significant things so that they can create this positive culture. But they're actually so simple, it's about being a human, most of the things that employees are just like expecting is just like being a human. And we saw that during the pandemic. So the happiest employees were the ones from the companies who had the most conversation, because like they were having open conversation, they were being touched, and they were genuinely. And I mean, when you are not doing it genuinely, it tells. So, and I mean, it tells from the words, it tells from the tone of your voice, from your eyes. So even if you're in a virtual environment. So, I mean, I think being genuine and also being vulnerable and saying that it's okay. So it's okay not to know something. It's okay not to be okay. So, I mean, I think those are like the simple things that creates the positive culture. And I would like to add one more thing. At our Happiness at Work program, we mentioned 3 P's, and that's the pleasure, and the pleasing, and the second one, and then the purpose. So, and the passion and purpose. So at the moment, what we see most companies are doing to create a positive culture is all at the pleasure level, which is like doing happy hours, or just like, you know, giving perks, like, you know, meditation programs. But that's at the pleasure level, and the duration of the happiness is really low. So if you go to the passion level or the purpose level, then the duration of maintaining that happiness level is going to be much longer, and people are going to give in. So it's not like, you know, making them do something more, but they will just like, you know, be feeling that positive vibes at the company. So it's not like, I'm not saying that you can't just like, you know, do the happy hours and make people happy. It's a good combination of all. So doing some of the pleasure level and the passion level and the purpose level, so that the employees are just like, you know, engaging at the level of purpose and passion and pleasure.
Thank you. It's difficult to add, so who would like to give it a go?
I'll just real quick while our panelists are thinking, just to support that a little bit more. When I think about positive work environment, I often think about self-determination theory, which is a really good foundation, because self-determination theory, it's kind of a meta framework, and there's 3 components to it. Basically says for people to feel motivated, like they can do their best, people are looking to feel autonomy, they're looking to feel competence, and they're looking to feel relatedness. And I agree. Often I think she was just using the language around pleasure, right? And then there's the passion and purpose. But often, there's multiple dimensions or multiple lenses that we could use to think about a positive work environment. And sometimes just focusing on creating that autonomy for someone, or giving someone a sense of competence or mastery in the work that they do, can go a long way towards creating that positive environment.
Thank you, Sony. Angela.
Yeah, I think all of these things are such powerful ideas and not hard to implement, whether you're a manager of a small team, or you've got a department, or you're a company leader. And one thing I'll just echo on what Sony said earlier is that power of asking somebody how they are, but actually meaning it. So many times that's a throwaway question. Hi, how are you? And I just keep walking. But really leaning in, how are you? Like, really, how are you today? And caring about the answer. The other thing I would add is, what happens when something does go wrong? What do you do? How do you keep that positive? And I think as a leader, as a manager, if you lean into what did you learn from that, and how can we go forward? How can we go forward to making that, not making that mistake again, and learning from that, and moving on, instead of sitting in on the past and focusing so much on what went wrong. I think that's one of the big differences just at the meta level that I see between positive and negative environments. Negative tend to be very focused on past mistakes, and positive tend to be focused on what's the future possibilities. And you can do that in your little micro environment as well, regardless of what the macro is. You can do that with your employees and with your people by just continuing to say, yeah, that didn't go well. Let's get ready and move on to the next thing, instead of sitting in the mire of the negative.
I just saw a few comments that popped up over the last minutes. raising the challenge, like, this is all great, but we know that there are people who are just on the negative side, no matter what. So question to anyone, but also Dan and Nicole, I would like to invite you into the conversation. How do we make those people part of the positive environment? And then you said about healthy tension. Is this something that falls under that umbrella, or is this a misassumption or misperception?
You're always going to have people that are negative, and a lot of times, that might be something that they've either learned or they think is what they should be doing, or again, there's often a lot of times where negativity can breed or come from home life. And so, I think a couple things that I'd talk about is that if you do happen to have someone that is kind of exuding more negativity, the tension kind of leans, in the wrong direction, I'll say. It's important for the manager or the kind of a person close to the individual to kind of ask, like, what is there a problem? What is the problem? Like, are you willing to share what that is? And then you can try to help it to a degree, but I also don't want to put so much work on a manager's shoulders to help people figure out their home problems. That's something for them to work out. But when they are at work, when they are kind of working with people, I think one of the toughest conversations to have is to bring up the fact that, maybe they do have a bit too much negativity, or kind of showing or explaining to them some of the behaviors that, classify as negative or overly toxic. And when you do that, I think a couple of people have mentioned, you've got to do it in an environment that's probably a bit more personal, but also something where you shape the conversation as to what have we learned from this? What if we were to do things differently, how would that affect yourself and the organization, the team? And I think someone also commented like, hey, how do you try to change someone's mind who might be a little negative or toxic, and to show them the value of positivity? And a lot of that can come from, asking them, okay, what challenges do you currently have with the work that you're working on? How could someone help you? How could we, as a team, alleviate some of the concerns or challenges that you have? And who is that? What do you have a working relationship with them? Do you have some type of, I guess the easiest thing is, do you have some type of relationship that needs to be fixed? Was there an incident that you're kind of still holding on to that if you spoke about, you could potentially figure out what or how to change that aspect? For me, it's all about, as a manager, you're constantly trying to help your teammates, your direct reports, fight through kind of the normal challenges and concerns of work so that they can do their best work. And if they're kind of stuck in a puddle or, stuck in a hole, how do you help them kind of get out of that? What's the ladder to get out of the pit, that you can help, provide to them so that they're less of in a rut or a sticky place that you can kind of get them out of. Because once you be able to show some of that compassion, I think other people, definitely realize that even the toughest situations, you can help to alleviate some of those, or I guess some of that pain, or some of those issues, so that they can, again, refocus on what does actually provide them value and interest in the work.
Go ahead, please.
Nicole.
I wanted to add to that. I think for me, what I did also realize is then actually talking to the person directly and asking the person about the negativity, for me was also eye-opening, because some person do know that they tend to more negativity, and other person, they do not even realize how they're communicating, what they're saying, it tends mostly to the negative part. And then either way, there are people that actually want to change, then you can actually help them, and other people you can try to influence by others. It's the same with every movement we have in history. You have one person who starts something, then you get on another one, and then it creates a wave. And sometimes the wave can influence the people, and if the wave is not enough, negative people then will also at some point leave the company because they do not feel comfortable anymore. What I did in my team, for example, we introduced a swear jar and a negativity jar, and we challenged each other and told them, look, this was now really negative. So you had to pay like 50 cents. And then we asked the person, how could you rephrase it? Now we actually got so good with it that there is almost no money incoming anymore. Now we started with the project of actually you pay for it if you apologize unnecessarily. So there are similar methods. They do not work for everybody. And coming back, a manager has a lot of influence and you can do a lot within your team. But also for employees out there, if you have a team, find someone who's supporting you. Try to create your wave within your company. You do not have to be a manager to start there.
I love that, Nicole, and I do hope that we will see a spike in jar sales over the next days. Sony, I saw you wanted back into the conversation.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I need to take a chill pill.
You need to put something in the sorry jar.
That's right. Exactly. I think AppRadar the revenue would increase majorly if I came to join your team. So I did ask ChatGPT, by the way, this question just now, and I think ChatGPT agrees. ChatGPT says communication, leading by example, providing opportunities for feedback, training and development. Last one it says is addressing negativity, which we've talked about. But one point on this addressing negativity, there's a potentially a generational viewpoint here, and certainly a geographic, cultural one as well. For example, I've worked with teams in Poland before, right? And this is my personality is just very different than some of the dev team members in Poland, right? And so I'm like coming out of these meetings like, man, I just feel like they're not into any of this at all. But it's just the way that they are. It's just the way that they talk, the way that the interaction's different. And we also don't want to run the risk of having an environment that's toxically positive, right? And certainly, in our discipline, we're very focused all the time on interactions and empathy. And that's by personality. We're kind of made for the work that we do, and other people are made for the work that they do as well. So I think we also want to be mindful of that.
Mm. What I'm hearing from you is that we actually, for a positive work environment, we need people across the entire spectrum and not, just concentrated on being very positive. And I love the fact that you call down in the conversation, extreme negativity and also extreme positivity. And you just reminded me of a wonderful quote. I sometimes use it in my own work when advocating for diversity, real, genuine diversity, and harnessing people for the value that they can bring. And it says, the optimists designed the plane and the pessimists the parachute. So, there's a focus area for everybody. If you can believe it, we are quite well into our second half of our time. So just a very quick welcome to those who joined late. And if anybody needs to drop off before the hour is up and you feel that you are missing out on a great conversation, you're right, you are. But you can watch the recording. Just visit us at hackinghrlab.io and you see this recording and then our March series, our previous April conversations, and a lot of goodies coming in May and June. Now, back to our conversation, because you triggered my curiosity. I piloted this question yesterday in a panel and I kind of liked it. And I was like, let's keep it for today. We mentioned leading with empathy, showing up with vulnerability and authenticity, powerful conversations, deliberate discomfort. But here's the question. I'm not sure that skills is the best label, but bear with me. What are some of the skills, and I'm particularly interested in outlier skills, that people can develop, regardless of whether they're managers or, not in a management position. So what anyone can really be intentional and mindful about developing that will contribute to positive work environment. So if you want to call out one in particular, but I'm also interested in one that is oftentimes lower on the radar and it should deserve more highlight. And Nicole, would you like to go first?
I think the classical one is listening, and I think it's one of the most difficult ones. Really listening and really taking the time to listen is something that is really hard. We all have a smartphones. Some of us have even smart watches. And the second you look somewhere down or somewhere is the second you break contact. Maybe you already lose trust or you're not that connected. So again, coming back for me, and again, we always talk about it, but undivided attention and really listening is, for me, a crucial skill.
Thank you. Being present.
Yeah. I like the thick skin stuff. It's easy for people to overreact quickly. Not kind of, again, I think this actually falls pretty much under the listening aspect or the listening skill set, so to speak, but not reacting too quickly, understanding as much of the situation as you can. Obviously, you can't take every challenge or issue and kind of fully investigate, but also bringing into context of kind of what's happening, but being able to listen a little bit and listening before you react or talk. I think that really does help. And then again, for professional settings, it's trying to pull your emotions out of it a little bit. So don't let everything kind of get under your skin, but for the most part, being able to listen to someone, process that information, and then provide feedback after they've kind of fully been able to explain what their issue is. I think often too times people jump to conclusions, and that's never a good idea.
I'd add a couple of things to this great list that we're developing. One is, I think we've talked about it before, gratitude. Just developing that ability to say thank you to people, to notice what people are doing, and then say thank you for it. It creates not only positive vibes for them, but it changes your own heart and mind as well. The more often you say, and genuinely, we've talked about, I think genuineness is maybe a skill we've talked about a lot too, but genuinely saying thank you, genuinely having gratitude and appreciation, and being specific when you share that appreciation. I'm grateful for this that you did. Here's the impact it had on me. And you can be just get a practice of doing that. The other thing I would throw out there is, being resilient, being able to move on from things that maybe have derailed you or been negative, and being able to say, okay, well, we'll move on and we'll look forward to our current situation, being mindful of the present, or we'll look forward to what's coming, and being able to bounce out of some of those negative situations instead of staying mired down in them.
I'd like to add empathy, because I think, and like when I say empathy, we usually say that it's putting yourself in the shoes of the other. But we were on a panel with a couple of psychologists, and I really loved how one of the psychologists was defining it, saying that it's not putting yourself in the shoes of the other, because you cannot replicate that experience, because that person has an accumulated knowledge, experiences, so it's not going to be the same thing. But thinking, what would I be doing if I were in that person's place? So if I went through the same thing, what would have been my reaction, or what would I have been feeling? So I think empathy is really important. And just like, again, I want to highlight the being genuine. So being genuine towards the other. And just like, as Sonia was suggesting, genuinely asking how that person is feeling. So I was like talking to a manager, and he said, what, I always keep a note of the names of their relatives or their pets, so that when I am asking about something, that I use their names. And so I think that's something really simple, but that shows that you are just like caring for them. So I think like showing that empathy is really important being a leader. And the second thing is continuous learning, love of learning, and being open-minded to learn something new. And just like, showing that you are also learning something new each day. So you cannot know everything. And just like, being open-minded and just like be receptive to what the others are also giving you to learn more.
Sony,
I like that.
it's a tough one to follow. Oh,
Oh, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I was. I'm so in all seriousness, no, yeah, these are all really good ones. The one thing. Oh, by the way, that was a great idea about putting down names of people. Yeah, I would just be really careful about where you put that list. Someone sees a list of like I wrote down the name of your siblings and your kids and stuff, but I'm sure if you do it in the right context, it'd be really great. But yeah, the one thing I would say to add is asking really good detailed follow-up questions. So for example, if I were to ask Angela, how was her day yesterday? And she said, oh, it's pretty good. I had some meetings. A lot of times people will be like, oh, that's nice. And then they'll kind of move into the next thing. But oh, so what was the best meeting you had yesterday? She'll say, oh, well, I met with a client. I was working on the thing, blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's really cool. How long have you been working with that client? So it's just like drilling. If you ask 3 follow-up questions to drill 3 levels in, most likely that person has not gone 3 layers with maybe anyone other than a partner, a family member. So that really creates a big difference, not just asking questions, but asking follow-ups going 2 or 3 levels in.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I do that a lot.
Yeah. One thing that when probably you're still on this learning curve of going deeper, and if you don't want to come up with questions, then you can say, oh, tell me more about it. Just create that space of inviting people in. So don't stress over, oh, my questions are not high quality enough, or they don't sound right. If just saying, oh, tell me more about it, that's enough, and that's good enough, and you're present enough with that one. Now, you all dropped quite a few conversation hooks, and I made mental post-it notes, so there's no escape from them. Conscious of time, if we can just take a short round of very value-dense answers, that would be wonderful. So the first question is productivity, operational efficiency, operational excellence, no matter what kind of labels or buzzwords we use, that's pretty much top of mind at the moment. So what is the business case, the hard facts and figures driven business case for a positive work environment? And we can go clockwise, and I just, Mina, you go first.
For those of you who are interested to see some results, you can check the results, employee engagement results, and the performance results of WD-40 company. It was run by Gary Ridge, and I'm a fan of him. And he has built a strong culture, positive tribe culture in the company over the last 25 years. He is retired now. But all of the employee engagement scores are still at like over 90s. And they are just like, people are proud to be working in that company. And the annual growth was like, surpassing any other competitor. So if you look at like the sustainability reports, there's like the companies with a strong culture, with a positive culture, they are just like 3 times as successful as keeping the changes sustainable. Or like performing, if you check the Great Place to Work winners, you see that like they are doing way better than any other company. And so this is not something nice to have anymore. So because like and let's say a decade ago, it was like seeing something like, a nice to have, something like, as you said, fluffy in the company. But this is like proven by the fact now. So this is like 2 + 2 4. And so if you do not embrace this, if you are not just like, making sure that there is a positive culture in your company, it is likely that you will stay behind the competition. And so this is not only making your employees happy, but this is about performing. And if you just like maintain that positive culture, you will see the results, not of course from overnight, but in the long run, even in the mid run, you will see that you are performing way better than any other competitor.
Thank you, Mina. Shall we go clockwise? Nicole.
I think another or books you can also read about where you get some hints. It's like Good to Great, Great by Choice, and also when you research or if you research now companies that did survive or did not survive Corona, a lot of insights you will find. You can check the Harvard Business Reviews is a positive work culture. And I can also state I can also see it in my team. If something is amiss, they have the feeling and I never have to ask them to stay longer. They stand there and they ask me like, hey, how can I support you? Let's order dinner together. So for me, there is a proof in increase in productivity and also in collaboration, even in creativity. I've never seen my coworkers so creative as when they are happy and when they also share their worries and thoughts. So again, checking out some stuff out there in KPIs is also, it's great, but try a little experiment in your own department with your own coworkers, and you can also see the change and you can track the change.
Thank you, Nicole. Dan.
When I think a lot about productivity, I think some of the things we look at is or tend to think about is almost the capacity stuff. So obviously, if you take 100% of your work time during the week, I tend to try to push people, especially these days, into finding time at least every week for a reflection. And I don't think it needs to be more than 30 or 45 minutes, but and you don't have to do it alone. You can do it with someone. So whether or not you kind of take time to go to lunch with someone, or again, if you like to prefer to do it by yourself, your commute, your own lunch, or just kind of some time in the afternoon at some point, find time to kind of reflect on what's going on. Reflection is probably one of the most powerful tools in order to understand kind of what went well for you, what didn't go well, and how you can change going forward. If you don't take time to reflect and you just kind of are always doing, you might feel like you have better productivity, but in the end, you're just going to continue to do some of the same things that maybe aren't as efficient or effective. And the reflection period kind of helps you to really think about what did work, what didn't work, and what you can work on changing.
Thank you. Angela.
Yeah, if I just want to kind of bottom line this, happier people are more productive people. So they're creating more profitability and performance for the company. Happier people are less exhausted people. So they're more efficient and they're not burning out as much. Happier people are more loyal. So you don't have as much spend on turnover. So there's not a choice between profitability and productivity and positivity. In fact, positivity accelerates and multiplies productivity. So your business case is start with that. Start with the impact. Start with the data. That here's how much turnover we have. Here's how much I could get it down to if we had a positive work environment. Here's how much lost productivity we have because of exhaustion. Here's how much improved if we had a positive work environment. So you start with the impact and the data, and then you come back with the here's how we do it from a positivity standpoint.
Thank you.
In my experience at this point, saying positive work environment is good for business. It's an axiom like the sun is hot, right? Like everyone pretty much agrees with it. The problem is that we don't really understand how it happens, which is part of this conversation. But if someone genuinely doesn't believe that's important, it's like, well, is there an energy company that doesn't believe in climate change, or a tech company that doesn't believe in AI? If you're working at one of those companies, try to work in another one, because the market will fish those companies out. They're just not going to be around the next 5-10 years and beyond. But if you're having to make a business case, I would focus on either retention or cost of hire, just getting into the details. And retention usually is a case that you can make to someone that isn't thinking this way. However, some companies, you may be working at a company that actually is kind of a little, they don't really care about retention. They have a very mindset, well, if the person leaves, we'll just replace them, right? If you're in a big company, especially, you've got a lot of jobs where I've got a big workforce, I can go hire people, right? And they're always thinking, oh, I just get someone better. Not true, but that's how they think. Cost of hire, every executive, every CEO, every board understands the cost of hiring people and that being important, even when hiring is slowing down. So you can very easily make the case on the impact of, and we don't need to get into all the detail here for time, but absolutely the positive work environment, the impact on your employer brand and being able to hire people at a reduced cost. It's a significant impact. So I would focus there.
Thank you all so much. And every single Hacking HR conversation right around this time has, the Dr. Seuss moment. How did it become so late so soon? And Hacking HR hours, they should have more than just 60 minutes. And I keep advocating for that. Now, the absolute last question of today with 2 spins. 1, please think about the answer as if it was a teaser for a future panel, because it will definitely be. And 2nd, make it like a mic drop moment. Otherwise, no pressure. Now, here's the question. You all mentioned, some other real big ticket items, fundamental topics in the workplace today, DEIB and mental health. Now, in a lot of previous Hacking HR panels, people mentioned that, there's a still long way to go from these being very programmatic, very campaign driven. And sometimes, Mina, what you said with, addressing the pleasure elements of a positive work environment, that also has some programmatic, vibes to it. Here's the question. How do you link a positive work environment to DEIB and mental health? Real one powerful sentence. How are these 2 linked? And what we can do, we can either do it popcorn style, or I can pass the e-mic around. You can decide. I pass the e-mic around or popcorn style?
Popcorn. And that makes you go first, Sony. So link positive work environment to DEIB and mental health. One powerful sentence. I'm going to cheat, but I started our panel with this today as the thing that I've been thinking about a lot the last few years. But to belong is to be short. I really believe that. And when it comes to DEI, I'll just leave it there. To belong is to be short.
Mic dropped. Wonderful.
Humans want to belong somewhere. And when you belong, it's a positive environment for you, regardless of what that looks like. So it's all about belonging. And belonging is all about DEIB.
Thank you. Dan, would you like to go?
I'll probably mirror kind of what someone said in the comments here, is that happy employees and happy customers are some of the most profitable organizations. And I tend to wholeheartedly agree with that.
Thank you. Well, Nicole.
I would come back with one of my favorite books. I would say it is From Good to Great. If you find the link and if you can combine it, this is when it goes from good to great.
Thank you so much. Mina, so difficult to go last. Literally.
I know. I would say, it's all about the soil. So, people thrive if you provide them the right soil. So you don't need to do anything if you just provide that soil for them to flourish.
Thank you. You reminded me of a great quote from a Dutch management consultant, Alexander Der Hayden. And he said, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment, not just the flower. So Mina, Nicole, Dan, Angela, and Sony, such a wonderful, wonderful pleasure having you today. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching or enjoying the recording. I hope I will have the chance to welcome you again on a panel very soon. And tomorrow we will have an amazing conversation. We will be building the case for empathy at work. Wishing you all an amazing rest of the day, rest of the week, and may you enjoy positive work environments. Thank you all so very much. And thank you, Jessa, in Backstage. Always a pleasure doing events with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.